What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Run Pass Opinion, where today we'll be going over the 2021 Chicago Bears draft class on a pick-by-pick basis, offering analysis, draft grades, and then at the very end, a summary grade for the whole class, as well as maybe a little bit of projection as to what things will look like going into this 2021 Chicago Bears season. But without any further ado, let's dive into the first pick, where of course we have to review the Chicago Bears trading up, going from number 20 to number 11 with the New York Giants to draft none other than Justin Fields. Now look, I hate to be the guy that starts off his draft grades video by handing his favorite team an A+ in the first round, but what else am I supposed to do when the Chicago Bears at number 20 reset their franchise with one of the best quarterbacks in this class? Specifically, if you're asking me, I think Fields has been the number 2 prospect in this class since high school, and nothing Zach Wilson or Trey Lance did in their respective last couple of years, namely for Wilson 2020 and Lance 2019, did anything to change that in my eyes. Fields is incredibly athletic, shockingly smart, very accurate when throwing the football both in and out of the pocket, and I think when you look at what that gives the Bears as far as a platform to build on, I couldn't possibly be more excited. Now, we do have to grade the trade in part of this, because I think Fields is a very obvious A+ from a positional value perspective, as well as what he can do on the football field. Everything about Fields is obviously a great choice, but is he the right pick at number 11 given what the Bears traded up for him? Well, let's take a look. So the Bears traded this year's first rounder, this year's 5th rounder, next year's first rounder, and next year's 4th rounder to get that number 11 slot. And when you take a look at the Jimmy Johnson chart, because I know that's what a lot of these NFL GMs use, that actually basically means the Bears paid to get to number 9 and handed that over to Dave Gettleman and the New York Giants for number 11. So it is a little bit of an overpay, but when I consider the fact that the Bears are resetting at quarterback, I would have expected them to pay a much more inflated price on the order, not the same, but on the order of what San Francisco paid Miami for number 3, but instead they were able to pay less than what I anticipated they would need to get up to number 8, which would have at the very least included the 2021 3rd rounder that they were able to hang on to. I love this trade. I love this pick. I think this is the kind of thing that you could run in draft simulators about 1,000 times, and it would never happen that the Bears get Fields at 11, let alone Fields falling all the way to 11. So the fact that Ryan Pace was able to make it happen, I have nothing but praise for this selection. It's an A+ for me. I do not want to hand out this grade often, but it gets one here. It earns it. I love this pick. And over the next probably 5 or 6 years, I think this is going to come to define the franchise in a very positive way. But obviously, I'm saying that right after draft night, we'll have to see who he becomes. Thankfully, he'll be assisted by the Bears' 2nd round selection, which was not made at pick number 52. Instead, the Bears trading up once again for Tevin Jenkins, the right tackle out of Oklahoma State. Now, Jenkins is a funny player because if you ask Brett Coleman, EJ Snyder, and plenty of other draft analysts, Tevin Jenkins was an easy 1st round selection, if not due to be the Bears' choice at number 20. Instead, he falls to 39, and the Bears trade, I'm not going to pretend it's not a hefty amount for him. They traded this year's 2nd round pick, this year's 3rd round pick, and this year's remaining 6th round selection at 204 for the Panthers' number 39 selection, where they took Tevin Jenkins, and 151, the 5th rounder. And if you do the math on that, that basically means that the Bears paid to get to spot 35 and instead got to spot 39. So again, a little bit of an overpay, but when you look at the player, Jenkins, I think it was worth it. Of course, there's a little bit of get your guyism out there, but Jenkins has the profile of a 1st round tackle. Incredible balance, shocking nastiness, and extraordinary strength both in run blocking and pass blocking that should be a nice upgrade wherever he fits on the offensive line. Now with Charles Lenocut, the left tackle, it seems as if Tevin Jenkins is going to be the heir apparent, and so we'll see if he's able to overcome some of the issues we saw in 2019 that Doug Farrar highlighted. But when I look look at Jenkins as a player, he is one of the most special tackles in this class, without a doubt, easily top 5. I would have him in the first round if I was a draft nick, which honestly I'm not, but when I look at this player, he easily profiles into the NFL. I'm very happy to see the Bears got him. He's shocking value at number 39. If this had been a 39th pick, I would have said it's an easy A+, but instead, given that the Bears did have to give up that 3rd round pick, though I love the player, this is an A- from me. Still an A, like very, very, very good pick. It cost something, hence the minus, but I love Tevin Jenkins. I hope he's able to overcome the hip injury that he has in his past, and I can't wait to see what he does in a Bears uniform on a Bears offensive line that needs a little bit of that nastiness that only Tevin Jenkins can provide. And if you watch, almost any of his film, he's just chucking dudes around left and right. I love it. So from there, we move on to the Bears' 3rd pick, which actually happens all the way in the 5th round with that number 151 selection that we just talked about them receiving from the Panthers. And the Bears selected an offensive tackle out of Missouri, so SEC profile, named Larry Borom. And this is a pick that I'm not quite as high on. Look, it's not as if he's a bad player, and plus we're talking about a 5th rounder. This isn't a 3rd rounder, this isn't a 4th rounder. We're at the point where whatever you can get value-wise, it has been a good selection, and that's going to be most of the profile of these next couple picks. But when I look at Borom, he's a guy that weighed in at 322, says he lost about 25 pounds by the time he was doing pro day workouts, and when you watch his film, you can see that he is a hulking mammoth of a human being and imposes his will in terms of strength, but then you look at his testing numbers, and he's not near as strong as a guy like Jenkins, who was able to put up 36 reps on the bench, and instead Borom only was able to put up 21, which actually mirrors the recently cut left tackle Charles Leno, who, as many Bears fans know, struggled with strength in the NFL. When I look at Borom, who has noticeably slow feet, both when he's pulling as a guard and frankly when he's working inside as a tackle, he much better sets outside or just straight engaging with his man. I do worry that his strength mostly came from his overwhelmingly large size, and then in the NFL, when he's up against guys like whether it's Nick Bosa or interior defensive linemen like Jeffrey Simmons on the Titans, that it won't be as easy for him. But again, we're talking about a 5th round pick, so you take the good with the bad, and you hope that Bears offensive line coach Juan Castillo can take a player who's known for his nastiness yet again and turn him into something more than the lumbering, large human being that we saw he was in college. If you're asking me, I think he projects better as a guard. I think he's a little slow-footed to play the tackle position, where, trust me, in the NFL, there are some really fast guys out there, and if Bobby Massey can't stand up on the edge forever, then I can tell you Larry Borom might have a rough road at tackle. If I'm grading the pick, it's a C+. I love the fact that the Bears double-dipped at offensive line. You've got to protect that franchise quarterback in Justin Fields, but I don't love the players so much. Again, we're still talking about a 5th round, but a guy like Stone Forsythe still on the board, very good pass protector, might have been a better ad. It's hard to know at this phase. Again, if it's me, I give it a little bit more than a passing grade. C+ feels about right. This is, I think, one of the weaker picks in this draft, but it's still passable. Plus, I'm never going to get upset about adding depth at offensive line. In the 5th round, you got to take the best you can get. I'm not 100% sure the Bears did, but they're the professional scouts, and I'm a guy on YouTube, so we'll move on from there and hope the best for Larry Borom. He's certainly got the size to make things work in the NFL. It's just a matter of seeing if he can add a little bit more of that strength and gain agility that just wasn't present on film and wasn't present in testing numbers, so that he doesn't get cooked by guys on lateral moves, inside twists, and the like. Now we move on to the Bears' 4th selection, which is one of 3 6th round selections now, as they drafted Khalil Herbert, and they actually traded down to do it, trading from, if memory serves, 208 down to 217 and picking up a 7th round pick we'll talk about later. And they drafted the running back out of Virginia Tech, a transfer named Khalil Herbert, and I love this pick. For me, This one's an A, and part of that's just because of my own personal bent. I love it when a GM takes a running back in a late round because I think that you can get great value there, but it's also partially because I think Herbert is way better than this spot. PFF, think what you will of them, had Herbert in their top 100 players, and I can see why when I watch his tape. Herbert is a very shifty back, slippery in the backfield, and fits perfectly in the outside zone focused system that the Bears have been running lately. If David Montgomery is the inside zone, contact-focused running back Bears fans have been used to lately, Herbert is the opposite, but not delving all the way into Tariq Cohen. He is quick out of the backfield, reads that bang, bend, bounce outside zone projection perfectly, and is able to maximize his space with whatever hole he's given. He's still good enough in terms of contact balance to handle arm tackles and even tackles near that ankle and leg area and continue moving, so he's a fairly tough runner in and of himself and distinguished himself in the ACC. He's a guy I can't believe the Bears were able to get, and I'm excited to see them add because it's a dimension of their offense I think they were missing as soon as Cohen went down. With this in tow, Herbert that is, I'm excited to see what the Bears do with Cohen, who's one of my favorite weapons on their team, and it makes me wonder if, because the Bears didn't really find that true slot weapon in the early rounds, if Cohen might be the plan there. But that's a conversation for another time. When I look at this, Herbert and Montgomery should be able to be a wonderful 1-2 pairing in Chicago. I believe in Herbert a lot more than I believe in Artavis Pierce, just from the little that I have seen. He is an awesome back to add. So as far as a 6th round pick can go, this is an A for me, and I stand by that. If this is starting to feel like I'm giving out too many A's, just know that I'm as surprised as you are. This is a draft class beyond anything I could have expected, and I certainly hope, along with many other Bears fans, that this can be a real reset from the franchise with Jenkins and Fields in tow. And the guy next that we're going to talk about, their next selection, I believe it was 221, in Dazz Newsome, may not join that group, but we will have to see. Dazz Newsome is your absolutely classic case of film versus testing numbers. And truth be told, I don't know where I sit on all these things. Both seem incredibly important, and what Dazz Newsome is good at is all the little things that you want to see from a receiver on film, especially in zone coverages. He is extraordinarily good at finding the soft spot, identifying where to go for his quarterback so that he can get open and generate yards. But in terms of his raw athletic ability, he is, and I mean this very seriously, one of the worst receivers in the class. So what are you getting with him? Well, you're probably getting some special teams value. Of course, the Bears' punt return situation is a dicey one, given that standout punt returner Tariq Cohen just got injured in that role and was lost for the season. So if the Bears do want to swap things up at what can be a dangerous position to some players, Newsome could be a nice add. It's not that he displays incredible agility in the open field, but he knows how to make tacklers miss, at least at the collegiate level. And while that may not translate to the NFL, I mean, let's be honest, where we were with Ted Ginn, even somebody that can just catch a punt is an upgrade. But where Newsome may really get the chance to make his mark is out of the slot. The slot, especially against zone coverages, is all about being able to beat a linebacker, which isn't that difficult in the NFL when you're a wide receiver, and settle into zones just like he's good at. That's probably what the Bears see in Newsome, is that ability to get himself open. Think of him as an Anthony Miller that's much less good against man coverage, but probably would get lined up a little easier and wouldn't punch somebody in a playoff game. So when I look at Newsome, I see him as an insurance pick. That's what you're looking for in the 6th round. This is another C+, nothing snazzy, nothing I think is phenomenal, but I understand where they're coming from. I think that they could get value out of him, and honestly, if he's just a punt returner, you're talking about a 6th round pick. That's still ultimately pretty helpful. So Newsome gets a C+ for me. Not upset at the pick, still like it enough, but not near as much as the Herbert, Fields, or Jenkins selections. But then we move on to 228, where the Bears got a player that I can't believe they were in the mix for. He's in PFF's top 80 players, and that's Thomas Graham Jr., an opt-out out of Oregon. He's a cornerback, and one I'm really really excited for. He's an intelligent player that when you watch the tape in 2019 displayed an innate ability to understand route concepts, to find the space he needed to be in before he actually needed to be there. This led to a really nice interception against Auburn, as well as a couple other nice plays throughout his career, and it's something that I think personally will translate really well into an NFL where, honestly, especially when you're a smaller guy like Graham is, not short, but at 5'10", certainly not a large outside corner, I think it allows him the flexibility to potentially work inside at the space now vacated by Buster Skrine in the nickel corner spot. This is a guy I am incredibly excited about because it seems like the Bears got extraordinary value here in the 6th round. Graham is a player that many had projected to go in the 3rd, maybe even the 4th round, and instead the Bears were able to get him in the late 6th. It seems like a classic case of a nickel corner being undervalued, given Graham is a little on the smaller side, and his intelligence should be able to translate much like Bryce Callahan's did quite some time ago in Chicago, now a stalwart on Denver when he's healthy. I am not trying to say that Thomas Graham is Bryce Callahan, but when I watch his film, I see that same intelligence, I see ability to generate velocity off of breaks from flat feet, I see all the things that should make him a stalwart in a zone-based defense. He might not be the best man defender, which a lot of people can focus on, but in a zone-based defense, that's not your need. And so I'm very hopeful that Graham is going to be able to contribute in a Chicago secondary that should be playing a lot more too high shells going forward, and especially if he can start to take over that nickel role by his sophomore, maybe his 3rd year in the league, that would be huge value out of the 6th round. The potential here with Graham is very high. For that reason, I'm going to give this one another A-. He's a defensive back, so late in the draft, obviously he's no sure thing, and plus an A- out of the 6th round. Let's be clear, this isn't near as valuable as a Tevin Jenkins, but given that this guy has a real outside shot at starting ever, I think that it's a nice position to give another high grade to. Ryan Pace currently swinging for the fences in this draft, and so far it's feeling really good. And now we bring up the rear with our final pick to grade, as the Bears selected Khyiris Tonga with the pick that they traded back for out of the 7th round. And I like this choice too. This could sound easily like I'm just saying, hey Ryan, I appreciate everything you're doing, but actually for the most part, I do. The Bears went 5 offensive selections in a row, which I felt like they needed because their offense was as poor as it was. Then they picked a potential starting nickel corner, and here a rotational defensive backup for Eddie Goldman. The Bears' defensive line has gotten awfully old over time as they've replaced younger guys with guys like Blackman, Mario Edwards, Brent Urban in the past, veteran defensive linemen to hold down the fort, and so adding a little bit of juice here with Khyiris Tonga, whose main knock is that he's old and that he didn't dominate enough at BYU, I see this as a nice positional choice that I'll tip my hat to. Tonga, when I watch him on film, the game I'm primarily focusing on here is the Coastal Carolina game, didn't dominate quite enough for what I'd want a 25-year-old in that conference to do, but I'll look at the positional choice here and say that I'm glad the Bears are acknowledging that not only do they need youth on the defensive line, but specifically that position, that nose tackle spot, could use a couple extra bodies at it, and the Bears don't need to keep picking up the John Jenkinses of the world, which, no discredit to them, just don't bring the value that a young player that might develop into the role can. I love this also because I think that this allows Bilal Nichols to flex back out to that 3-4 defensive end spot that he succeeds much more often at than the nose tackle spot, which honestly I don't know why they decided to start him there last year. It was never going to work. So I like the Tonga selection enough to tell you that I think it is a B, which, I mean, look, if you wanted to say that that's like not giving a grade for a 7th rounder, I would understand. I like the positional choice. I like the fact that he's an extra body in the draft class, but he's also a 7th rounder. So if he makes the team, if he makes the practice squad, thumbs up from him. Steven Denmark wasn't able to do that oh so long ago, so I shrug my shoulders and say I like the player enough. His tape doesn't sizzle, but what 7th rounders will. I'm okay with this. And now it's time to wrap up the draft class as a whole. Now, I could have spent a lot more time covering Fields and Jenkins. I probably will later on the channel, because those are the primary picks here, with the other picks mostly just bringing up the rear, adding support to an otherwise already top-heavy draft class. But I love this draft. I mean, if I was going to give you it a grade, it would be an A. I'm not going to give you it an A+, because I think that a lot of the picks that they trade away take that plus away from them, but they're able to reset their franchise quarterback. They either reset their franchise left or right tackle, either one of them being desperately needed, and added value in those later rounds, either at depth offensive line. Who knows if Dazz will make the team or contribute as a wide receiver, but at least he should be able to help in a special teams capacity. And then Khalil Herbert, a rotational running back, Thomas Graham, a potential starting defensive back in the future, and Khyiris Tonga. That's a strong draft class, especially given how low their draft resources were coming into this, being as they were missing a 4th round pick, needed a quarterback, and were down at number 20 to try to choose one. I can't believe what Ryan Pace was able to do here. Seriously, I have not been the biggest Ryan Pace supporter in the world, but this is one of those that you have to tip your hat for and say, wow, this could really change the franchise. And from this point, it's just a matter of seeing what happens. I don't know the future. You probably don't either, but this has me extraordinarily excited because I couldn't be higher on Justin Fields. Really, I couldn't. If you'd asked me mid-season, I would have told you that as cool as Zach Wilson's film was, Justin Fields's was even nicer to me. I have loved this guy for quite some time, and I cannot believe he is in a Chicago Bears uniform. Feels like the Bears may have finally caught a break, given that Carolina could have taken him, didn't. Denver could have taken him, didn't. The Eagles could have taken him, didn't, and the Bears were able to secure a trade up with Dave Gettleman, who at this point in New York has never traded down. So this is the one time it felt like the stars really aligned for the Bears, and for that, I mean, sitting here right now, not knowing how things will work out, I can't give this grade any lower than an A. From there, it's just a matter of seeing what happens on the field and finding out whether these players are going to be able to live up to that billing, but we'll have to wait and see for that. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. Let me know what you think of these grades. Did you like them? Did you not? Do you disagree? Do you think I have some players too high, too low? Let me know in the comment section down below. Feel free to talk on a pick-by-pick basis or just overall. Let me know what you think. It is an exciting time to be a Chicago Bears fan, and who knows? Maybe, just maybe, if the Bears get lucky, they could end up with one of the most talented quarterbacks in the division if Aaron Rodgers transfers on out of here. But we will have to leave that for another time. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. Bear down, and thanks so much for bearing with me.